In the city of New Orleans, a shadowy figure emerged that terrorized the city in the early 20th century. Between 1918 and 1919, the Axeman struck fear into the hearts of the Crescent City's residents. Under the cover of night, he would break into homes, leaving his victims brutally murdered, often using the homeowner's own tools, especially an axe. Despite the panic and desperate investigations, he was never caught, vanishing as mysteriously as he had appeared. The killer would kill 6 and leave 6 injured. His cryptic letter taunted the public, even claiming a taste for jazz, and turning the vibrant musical pulse of New Orleans into the soundtrack of a killer's spree. Welcome in, everybody, to This Dark Mystery, delving back into true crime, where we just dip our toes because we are not true crime experts, but we like to dabble in that world a little bit. I am your host, Rob Coakley, joined as always by Jesse Wilkins.
What is going on?
And Dave Wilkins.
Hello, Rob Coakley.
And today we are talking about the Axeman of New Orleans. This is our appetizer for New Orleans. We're going to be talking about a lot of paranormal stuff that happened in the city, that still happens in the city. I figured for side content this month, we might as well make this a full meal, right? Appetizers, desserts, vampires, whatever. Axes, you know. So we're going to do that. That's how we're going to kick off our New Orleans stuff this month. Are you guys excited to talk about a serial killer?
I'm always excited to talk about serial killers. I'm always excited for cereal.
Yeah, that is also true. Cocoa Pebbles, right?
Killer cereal. That's a killer cereal right there.
It is. Well, we just absolutely did a joke that 3,000 other people have done. So let's jump right into this episode and talk about the Axeman of New Orleans. Let's start with the first murders. On May 22nd, 1918, 28-year-old Andrew Maggio received his draft notice for World War I. Terrified at the thought of going to war, he spent the night drinking heavily at a bar before stumbling home in the early hours of sleep.
No one's ever done that in New Orleans before.
Around 4 a.m., strange noises and groaning woke him up. Still disoriented, he realized the sounds were coming from his brother Joseph and sister-in-law Catherine's room next door. Alarmed, Andrew hurried to his brother Jacob's house, and together they decided to investigate. Upon reaching the room, they found the back door broken and were confronted with a horrifying sight. Joseph and Catherine were lying in bed, covered in blood, with their throats slashed and their heads crushed. Catherine's injuries were so severe that she was nearly decapitated. Joseph managed to survive for a few more hours before dying from his wounds. Not what you want to come home to after a night of drinking.
No, and also not who I thought the victim was going to be when you began that story. Definitely a curveball.
Yes.
It wasn't the guy who was out drinking that got chopped up.
Well, it's very important to start with Andrew, as we're going to find out here in a few seconds, because during the investigation led by new police chief Frank T. Mooney, he failed to link this attack to previous Cleaver incidents. And what that is referring to is there was another killer, or the same killer, about 7 years prior that was running around New Orleans that had a couple of attacks, and then they ceased for 7-8 years, and then they started up again. But they couldn't link them, and Mooney believed that Andrew was responsible for the murders. The police pointed to the fact that the throat wounds were inflicted with a barber's blade, and Andrew worked as a barber. They also noted that the axe used in the attack belonged to Joseph, suggesting the killer knew the house well. So,
fair. I mean, that would be my first suspect, right?
Yeah, well, that's the problem with reporting crimes, right? Doing the right thing leads you as suspect number one. Also being family is a big tie in there.
Axe murdering your brother and his wife.
Yeah. Has that happened before?
I've never tried it. Thank you.
During this time, Italians faced heavy racism in the area. However, the case against Andrew Maggio was purely based on conjecture, and without a clear motive or any evidence, the police were eventually forced to release him. So this is the kickoff of the Axeman of New Orleans. It is a bloody, very tragic case. And this is where he sort of starts to establish his MO as well. This killer has the most specific victim type that I've ever heard of. You know how usually we hear they go after prostitutes or white women that are blonde or men that are 5'6" and under. This killer specifically targeted Italian grocers.
Grocers. Oh man. I hope they figured out who it was and why this was, what his beef with grocers were.
Time at a supermarket one time or something. I don't know. That is super specific, or the biggest coincidence of all time. We'll find out next on Dark Mysteries.
So just a little bit of background. Italians moving into New Orleans at this time really faced heavy racism from the rest of the city because of the fact that some of them were moving in and making more money than people that have been there and established. And that's kind of what they're thinking maybe one of the MOs was for this killer. Spoiler alert, this killer was never caught. So
damn.
But we will have some theories later in the episode. But most of his victims were Italian grocers. There's a few that weren't. We'll talk about all of those.
So the grocers were making more money than everyone else?
Well, more money than people in their fields because people wanted Italian food.
Oh, that makes sense.
It all comes back to the spaghetti.
And there was also racism because people just inherently believed that Italians were part of the mob. That was what their belief system was, that they came there and they were creating a mafia, which is slightly true, but it doesn't mean that every Italian is part of the mob, So
yeah.
For the record, we're all pretty Italian, so
yes.
For the Italian listeners, we're right there with you, huh? We're talking here.
I don't know if I've told this story on the show before, but my favorite was when telemarketers used to call my grandparents' house because their last name is spelled Ania. And trying to hear
how they do with that.
Yeah. So trying to say it's pronounced Anania, but then listen to them fumble through a
they just do the Batman song, just na.
It was always a pleasure. That's how I knew if they knew my grandparents or not, by how they pronounced that name.
Well, our grandfather, very Italian, last name is almost Mafia.
Yeah.
His name is Mafia. It's practically Mafia.
Yeah.
So where did the stereotype come from?
All right. Second set of attacks. On the morning of June 27th, John Zonka arrived at a grocery shop to deliver bread and found the owner, 60-year-old Polish immigrant Louis Basumer, standing at the door, covered in blood. When Zonka asked what had happened, Basumer seemed unfazed, and his injuries or the condition of his wife, 29-year-old Harriet Lowe, whom Zonka found lying in a pool of blood, but still alive.
Wait, how old was he?
He was 60.
29-year-old wife?
We're going to find out. Get ready. There's some curveballs in this one. These are also the two of the very few that weren't Italian.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, you immediately broke from that whole thing.
Yeah, but it goes back to it. Both were rushed to the hospital where Basumer claimed a mysterious intruder had attacked them with his own axe. The police found the back door had been broken into with a chisel left behind, which is very important because that happened at a lot of these houses, but grew suspicious of Basumer due to the less severe nature of his injuries compared to his wife. Their suspicions deepened when they found letters in various languages in his possession, and a delirious Harriet accused him of being a German spy, an alarming claim during a time when the U.S. was at war with Germany. And the case took another strange turn when a woman claiming to be Basumer's wife arrived in the city, revealing that Harriet Lowe was actually his mistress.
Oh, shit.
So we have movie stuff. We have a
lot of stuff going on in the story. Yeah.
We have a Russian spy. We have
German
an axe murderer. Oh, sorry.
Much different than a Russian spy in World War II.
German spy. Sorry.
Yes.
They were not in the
an axe murderer, a grocer, a bread delivery man, unfaithfulness,
Italians,
New Orleans. Words. Harriet Lowe died in August after complications from surgery, and the case against Bassumer relied on her inconsistent statements made while she was suffering from severe head injuries and under heavy sedation. So basically what happened is she originally said that there was a man that attacked both of them. And then during some interrogations with her, while she was still really messed up, she was saying that Bassumer attacked her. But he was pretty messed up too. He wasn't in the condition she was in, but he still had his head cracked open and like a bunch of different other injuries. So
I thought he was uninjured. I thought he answered the door covered in.
He was still kind of injured.
He just wasn't
bad.
Yeah, he just wasn't on the ground like
Gotcha.
she was. So she would actually end up going on to pass away during a surgery several weeks later, trying to I think it was actually a cosmetic surgery too, trying to fix some of the damage.
Fix up some of the damage. Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. Bassumer was acquitted at trial in 1919 after the jury deliberated for only 10 minutes. The detectives who had interviewed Lowe were later demoted for mishandling the case. Meanwhile, while Bassumer awaited trial, more people became victims of brutal attacks. So
now, was he awaiting trial in lockup?
That's what I read.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he was. So there's that whole situation. And then we get the third attack, which is wild. On the night of August 5th, 1918, 28-year-old Mary Schneider, who was 8 months pregnant, was home alone because her husband Ed was working the night shift. She assumed he had come home early when she heard someone enter the bedroom. She was tragically wrong. The last thing Mary remembered before losing consciousness was a large, dark figure looming over her. Hours later, Ed returned to find his wife with her scalp severely injured and bleeding. He rushed her to the hospital where doctors managed to save both her and their baby. 2 days later, Mary gave birth to a healthy baby girl.
Wow.
That was crazy.
Yeah, so wild, but also this killer's 3-3 right now. Basically, he's got 3 actual kills. Oh, sorry, he's 3-2. Because he's killed 3 people and 2 have lived. So
and they all initially lived, right, and then died. Whether they died later in surgery or,
well, not the first 2. The first 2 they found.
Oh, right,
really dead. They were like super dead, almost decapitated dead. And I think this is interesting because we did the Villisca axe murders and we covered the man from the train, and they actually brought this case up a little bit. And part of the reason that they didn't think that this man could be the man from the train by any means is because of this success rate. The man from the train, basically, I think maybe one person got away, if I recall correctly. Like that dude just didn't leave anybody. Right. He was an absolute menace. And this guy, not that great at murdering when you have this much of a head start on people.
Sloppy.
In. Yeah, very sloppy. But there are some similarities where he's grabbing items at the location to use rather than bringing his own stuff.
Also, he's just leaving a chisel behind at the scene of every single one. Isn't he getting sick of buying new chisels?
Right. The police discovered that the weapon used in the attack wasn't an axe, but a lamp with which the intruder had struck Mary repeatedly.
This isn't the same killer.
Well, they might not have had an axe. We heard this from the man on the train too. He preferred an axe, but not every location he went to had an axe and he had to improvise.
I must get clarification. Did you say he used a lamp?
A lamp, yeah.
Okay.
So, again, an object that was in the house.
Got to work with what you got.
As in the Bassumer case, authorities do not believe this attack was connected to the Maggio killings. They may have been right, as neither attack followed the same victim profile. However, there was disturbing similarities. Back doors were broken into with a chisel, and in the Bassumer case, the killer used the victim's own axe. The attacker never brought his own weapon and likely resorted to using the lamp in the Schneider case because he couldn't find an axe. So I did write that in there as well.
So the only thing that really ties this is the chisel,
so far,
which is a pretty, it's a pretty distinguishing factor.
Absolutely. The New Orleans press, however, they saw a pattern, And days after the Schneider attack, the Times-Picayune ran a headline calling the suspect the Axeman for the very first time. The city's residents, gripped with fear of a serial killer prowling their streets, bought newspapers in droves, and within days, the Axeman would strike again, confirming their worst fears. As with all cases, we do see the press playing it up a bit, but also you have to report on the news as well. So it's sort of a...
Also, if it's a serial killer at large, I mean, like obviously the newspaper's number one job is to sell newspapers.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like you got to warn the public that there's an axe murderer. Lock your doors.
But again,
don't have an axe.
We're just giving them the coolest names.
Get rid of all your lamps.
Yeah. can't have anything in your house. Actually, just get rid of all your belongings. But let's stop calling these killers cool names. Like the Axeman of New Orleans sounds awesome. I'm not going to lie to you.
Let's just call him like the Whistling Slipper Man.
Yeah.
Well, if I don't want to be called that anymore, I'm just going to stop killing people.
Let's call him the kind of bad at killing killer.
Yeah. The human lampshade.
They could just make up details too, just to make him sound like much less intimidating. He wears swimmies whenever he approaches a crime scene.
Dude, have you heard the case file on the? He was San Francisco? He was like a serial killer that went. It was a case that went pretty much cold for years, and then he ended up getting caught because of DNA.
The Golden Gate Killer.
The Golden Gate Killer. Yeah. But the case file guy, when he was narrating the story, he kept including the fact that the killer had an unusually small penis. And he just said it.
Yeah,
he just said it like 150 times throughout like 3 or 4 episodes.
That's how it should be reported on, even if they don't. Just say they all have tiny penises.
Yeah, yes. It was just so funny because it was like such a horrible case, but every once in a while I'd be like, and they included the detail that he had an unusually small penis.
All right. So the fourth attack. On the night of August 10th, 1918, 15-year-old Pauline Bruno was startled awake by a commotion in her home. As she sat up, she saw a man standing in her doorway.
With a remarkably small penis.
In the darkness, she could just make out this tall, heavy-set figure dressed in dark clothes. Pauline screamed, waking her younger sister Mary, who also saw the intruder. The man hesitated briefly, as if considering whether to silence the girls, but instead fled the scene. Moments later, their uncle, 31-year-old Joe Romano, stumbled into the doorway, clutching his face. Though he managed to walk out of the house, he had been struck deeply, the wound cutting through to his brain.
Oh, Jesus.
Joe died soon after.
Yeah. That sounds horrifying to witness and probably to experience, but...
Yeah, and it probably happened super fast because the uncle heard the girl screaming. He's probably flying around the corner and just comes face to face with this man that just, as soon as he sees him, swings an axe, right?
Horrifying.
Yeah, absolutely terrifying. The evidence left behind, a broken back door and a bloodied axe discarded inside, made it clear that this was another Axeman attack. For the first time, Police Chief Frank Mooney acknowledged that they were dealing with a serial killer, specifically targeting Italian immigrants. Fear spread through the city, with both Italian and non-Italian residents arming themselves and taking turns watching over their families at night. Despite Mooney's public promises to catch the killer, it was obvious his department had a little to go on. After this one, the killer would go on a hiatus.
Interesting. So we didn't find the chisel at the last one, I don't think.
No, we didn't find the chisel, but we did find the broken back door.
The axe.
And the axe.
Or he just started finally taking the chisels with him. This man got tired of buying chisels.
Well, he also got discovered right away too, right? Like he broke in and people saw him and he was startled. So very, like, again, this guy is not the guy that was at Villisca. Villisca was like, that guy was always precision, knew when he was going to do stuff. I know he had a few that went a little haywire in the beginning, but like that guy learned from his stuff, which is even more terrifying. So the fifth attack happens in 1919, specifically on March 10th. The Axeman would strike again, this time in Gretna, which is a suburb of New Orleans, where he killed 2-year-old Mary Cortamiglia and attacked her parents, Charles and Rosie. As the incident fell outside New Orleans, Police Chief Frank Mooney's jurisdiction, he watched in dismay as the Gretna police mishandled the investigation, contaminating fingerprints and quickly fixing the broken back door. Why?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Like, come on. I mean, I know we have to learn through time on crime scenes and stuff, but doesn't that, I mean, maybe
logically it doesn't even make any sense. You get to this crime scene, you're like, oh, we should probably fix this door.
Gotta paint it. Blood, get that out of here.
Yeah, like your 2-year-old is dead. The least of their worries is their broken back door. Also part of the investigation, you fools.
Oh, well, it does get worse. They arrested 2 neighbors, 68-year-old Orlando Giordano.
I like that you said that. I like that you said that like a 2-year-old. 68-year-old.
Because I was trying to figure out how to pronounce this guy's name because it's spelled Iorlando.
It's very hard to spell.
What? Have you ever seen that name? Because I haven't seen that.
I have not, no.
No.
And his 17-year-old son, Frank, who had previously feuded with the Cortimiglia family over a grocery store rivalry.
Oh, no.
I don't know if you guys have heard of grocery store rivalries, but they can get pretty intense.
It does sound that way, doesn't it?
However, the evidence against the Giordano men was flimsy. Now you got me. You're in my head, Jesse. You're just in my head while I'm trying to read this story.
It was quite flimsy.
I'm also still a little sick, so I feel like my voice is way off too. Orlando, suffering from arthritis and blindness, would have found it nearly impossible to wield an axe, while Frank, at 6'2" and around 200 pounds.
Although this could explain why he's so bad at actually killing people. He just can't see.
That is a good point.
A blind axe murderer. They actually arrested this guy. Like, you can't immediately rule like he's blind. Yeah, that's why I don't know. Like, what is that?
So while Frank at 6'2" and around 200 pounds could not have squeezed through the door, in the manner that it had been broken open, like he would have never fit. Knowing this,
wait, that's not like that big of a dude.
It's 6'2" in 1919. You might as well be 7'5".
He can't crouch and go through a doorway.
The way they're saying that, the way that
bumping his head on the top.
He's never going to get through this thing.
I think it was more about him being 200 pounds and the amount of the
That's
door.
That's not that big. How small are these doorways?
Yeah, 200 pounds is like sounds like average.
Like, what are they assuming, that he ran through the door full speed while standing straight up? Like, there's no other way he would have gone through this doorway.
No, they're saying
he was 200 pounds.
Cracked a little bit. It was a very small entry point. Okay. That he couldn't have squeezed through.
We assume because they fixed the fucking door, so no one really knows.
That's also a problem, right? So knowing that these details pretty much made it so that they weren't guilty, the Gretna police coerced Rosie into identifying the Giordanos as her attackers after she was denied legal representation following her hospital release. They produced a detailed statement for her to sign, despite her inability to read English.
There are a couple of flaws with this investigation.
Not good.
I'm going to come out and say it. I don't know if they did a great job.
We're gonna give the Gretna police station from 1919 an F, basically.
An F, yes.
Not a passing grade.
Failing grade.
Yeah.
This dubious testimony convinced the jury, leading to Frank's death sentence and Orlando's life imprisonment. Fortunately, they were both released in 1920 after Rosie recanted her statement and their convictions were overturned. So, thank God.
Insane.
But yeah, just blaming a blind man for an axe murder. But
a series of axe murders.
Series of axe murders. He just keeps going into the wrong house every night, thinking it's his own, just thinking there's intruders.
He's just defending himself. Where do I keep putting this axe?
Like, what else is going on?
Trying to chop. Well, you put him in the yard. He's just trying to chop firewood.
Dude, the detail that he's using an axe from the person's house. It's just a blind guy trying to locate an axe.
Yeah,
like in a stranger's house.
How long is he rummaging around your house for?
Right.
He just always happens to find the axe, except for that one time he used a lamp.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, that might explain it too.
He thought the axe was a lamp.
So here's where it gets pretty interesting. Because on March 13th, 1919, a letter claiming to be from the Axeman himself, was published in newspapers. So we are getting a very Jack the Ripper situation.
Dear boss
here.
letter.
Yeah, like a Dear Boss letter. And I'm going to read this letter for everybody because it is a doozy. It's a little bit long, but I feel as though it's in everyone's best interest to hear the whole thing.
Let's hear it.
Hell, March 13th, 1919.
Sounds like an intro. It sounds like an intro to a Hometown Ghost Stories episode.
Right off the bat, I'm disappointed. He should have started off with, my dumb, fat, blind ass couldn't make my way through that tiny door.
It's just scribbles.
No, it's Braille. They're like, oh, it was him. All right, sorry, continue.
Esteemed mortal, they have never caught me and they never will. They have never seen me. Oh, God damn it. Because he's blind. They have never seen me.
If he
That's
was
not how
blind,
that works.
I know. I'm just
never
saying.
seen them.
They can't see me because I'm blind.
This is a terrible crime we're joking about here. Too soon again.
They've
That was my
never
favorite on the. I'm sorry, that was my favorite on the Jack the Ripper. Was the comments that were like, "Wow, you guys are just going to joke about this tragedy, like it just happened." Like,
Yeah.
This is a little while ago.
They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians in your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way they have conducted their investigation in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not only amuse me, but his satanic majesty, Francis Joseph, etc., but tell them to beware. Let them not try to discover what I am, for it were better that they were never born than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there is any need of such a warning, for I feel sure the police will always dodge me as they have in the past. They are wise and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am, but I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in a close relationship with the angel of death. I'm going to pause for a second because you're very not good at this, sir. You have not, you have.
Yeah, he's really acting like he's been doing a good job.
Right. And your track record is.
I could slay thousands of you. 700 might survive, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ballpark, maybe. Yeah. So I just wanted to call out. Maybe we should relax on saying that I could kill thousands. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time on next Tuesday night, I am going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to you people.
I love how he breaks down earthly time. Like what? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not that. What time zone is hell in, by the way?
Probably whatever California's in is my guess, or Ohio. So I am going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned.
Reasonable.
If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it out that specific Tuesday night,
There's no way this is still part of the letter. Like, this has gotten ridiculous.
the people that do not jazz it out on that specific Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe.
Okay, I have new suspects. Owner of jazz music record store,
That is one of them.
or someone that is in a jazz band and has a really hard time getting booked for gigs. Now, I'm not saying that they were the killer. I'm saying that they might have wrote this letter.
That is actually one of the suspects when we get to that point.
All right, let's
That's
rock
what
and
people
roll.
were thinking. Well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, which I should have looked up what that is. I'm guessing something evil. And it is about time I leave your earthly home. I will cease my discourse, hoping that thou wilt publish this, that it may go well with thee. I have been, am, and will be the worst spirit that ever existed, either in fact or realm of fantasy.
So
The
Tartarus. Oh, sorry. So Tartarus is from Greek mythology. It's the name of both a place and a god that represents the underworld.
Hmm.
The infernal regions of ancient Greek mythology.
So put him on the list of suspects.
Yes, could have been him.
Could put Francis Joseph on there too, since he was named in the letter there.
That's true. So the city acquiesced, though. Everyone was playing jazz that night. There was almost like a big party, is in New Orleans most nights, around the French Quarter and stuff. Everybody was either at a bar with a jazz band or had some going on, and there was no attacks on that specific Tuesday night. And the Axeman didn't strike again until August, when he attacked grocer Steve Boca, who survived but had no recollection of this incident. And then on September 3rd, 19-year-old Sarah Lawman was assaulted while sleeping alone in her home. The attacker left an axe on her front lawn. However, since she was neither Italian nor a grocer, the intruder entered through a window instead of the back door. Doubts arose about whether this was truly the Axeman's work. Again, not great at this, right?
No.
Clearly, yep.
And the final murder occurred on October 27th, 1919. The wife of Mike Pepitone was awakened by a noise and arrived at the door of her husband's bedroom, just as a large axe-wielding man was fleeing the scene. Pepitone had been struck in the head and was covered in his own blood. Blood spatter covered the majority of the room, including a painting of the Virgin Mary. Pepitone's wife, the mother of 6 children, was unable to describe any characteristics of the killer other than large. And the Pepitone murder was the last of the alleged Axeman attacks.
The last in New Orleans, anyways, because I think like the Villisca case, you could have 3 possibilities. One is he died. 2 is I guess he got arrested. Wouldn't apply because we'd know unless he got arrested for something unrelated.
Yeah,
A
right.
lot of times they get arrested for something else.
Yeah.
And then 3 was he moved somewhere else and kept killing, because it's just like a serial killer who just stops being a serial killer doesn't make sense.
Did you mention that he could have died?
Yeah.
Okay, so you nailed it. Basically,
He could have gone back to what was it? Tartarus?
yeah,
Tartarus.
yeah.
Could have gone back to tartar sauce.
But you basically nailed it, Dave. They had an FBI profiler look into this, and they said the same thing. He was so ramped up and doing this so consistently, days, months. There's a few hiatuses here and there that you don't just ramp down like that. You don't just stop. So they think one of those 3 things happened to him as well. There is a list of suspects. They're very, very few. There was a man that the Pepitones, the last guy that died, they were involved in a murder several years before, and they believe that the guy that ended up killing them could have been somebody that was seeking justice against them. And there was even this story that came out years later that Mike Pepitone's wife moved to LA, and a guy showed up on her door and was saying that he had killed her husband and had actually killed her new husband as well. And that if she didn't give him a ton of money, she was going to die as well. And she shot him. She shot and killed him. But
And then the killing stopped.
But the problem with this story is somebody did a lot of research into it and found no facts about it. They couldn't find her moving to LA. They couldn't find any case with the guy's name, like the murder.
Where'd the story come from?
It was, people believe that somebody that was trying to create a news story had just kind of invented it to tie it up. And
tough thing to just create. Yeah.
Also, it doesn't add up with the other killings.
Yeah. Well, they also think that there might have been a lot of copycat killings in this one.
I was going to bring that up too, because when there's a serial killer going around killing, then that will be an opportunity to do your own killing if you had some loose ends you needed to tie up or something like that.
And there is another theory.
Especially if that loose end works at a grocery store and happens to be Italian.
Exactly.
There is one more theory, if you guys want to hear it.
Yes.
This is probably the least likely, in my opinion. You guys might find this differently. People believe that it was an actual spirit that was coming to kill all these people
and just do a really poor job.
That's my like whole thing. It's if this is an actual spirit or demon, they're gonna act. I don't think they need the axe. I'm just gonna throw that out.
I was gonna say that too.
They just don't need it. And B, their success rate I think is going to be way higher.
Yeah.
If it was an entity from hell.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think there could be entities that may have killed people before, could lead to their death, but I think it's going to look a lot more like natural causes. Like you have a heart attack, you have something going on where people basically just get scared to death. And I think that if entities are able to cause death, I don't think they're picking up an axe from downstairs, and
I don't think they need a chisel to break in the back door.
They don't need to break in. I mean, we don't make the rules, but if it was going to happen, like I really do think in like the I don't know if we've ever brought this up before, but the Black Monk of Pontefract case, the guy died of a heart attack in his upstairs bathroom. I mean, like it was right at the spot of a lot of the hauntings where this thing had appeared before. I think it's quite a possibility that the ghost may have appeared to him and scared him to death. I think this can happen, but no, I don't think it's happening in the form of axe murders. And if the ghost can't find an axe that uses a lamp, I don't think the entity is writing a letter to the newspaper. You know, well, it's fun to entertain it because this is Hometown Ghost Stories. I don't think that's how it works.
Although the letter to the newspaper clearly did state, "I'm an entity from hell."
He did.
He did admit it. There is that. There is okay.
I also don't think I don't think the letter was written by the actual Axeman, because my theory is the person that was doing this is somebody that worked in some sort of grocery store, held a vendetta against Italian grocers, was probably not very well educated.
Might have lost his job to an Italian grocer who came in to do it. I think you're on something there. Or I think that whoever wrote the letter, I think it's 9 times out of 10, it's just someone at the newspaper that's like, we've received a letter from the killer, just to sell more papers. I think that's really how it goes down.
Yeah, this is where I was leading to. Basically, I think that whoever was the killer was probably super uneducated, and I think that the letter was written by a reporter. It is like really well written.
Right.
And it's
Hear me out.
Good historical, Greek mythology mixed in and stuff.
Hear me out. Francis Joseph, right? He was a 20th century theologian, and he wrote books about Satanism and whatnot. And he would have been probably in his late 20s, early 30s around this time. And he was named in the letter. And this is the type of stuff that he writes about. So, like, he had a major book in the 1970s about Satanism.
Name drops him and everything. I don't think he was a killer, but I think he could have.
No, he probably wrote the letter. Maybe he wrote the letter. I mean, that's pretty serious accusation.
Name in there.
Yeah,
Francis
name drops
Joseph.
himself.
Whatever. Maybe go buy his books. I would, as a spirit. Yeah. So we kind of just hit on the basic details of this case. I fully encourage people to, if they're interested in it, to dive a little deeper, but that is the basic highlights of this very weird case. The fact that he was only batting, 500 in the murder department on this, 6 and 6, not great, just not great. Just didn't do a great job.
Yep.
Just not good.
Which is good. It's good for the survivors,
Yes.
At least they didn't die, because this guy sucks at this. And he also had his, that's my Australian accent, he also had a torn penis. So we'll go straight to British on that one.
Anyways, that is going to do it for us, everybody. Make sure that you let us know in the comments or on any type of platform who you think the killer was. Do you think he wrote the letter? We're interested in your theories, whether they're plausible or conspiracy riddled. We get them all, and we love reading them. So let us know. We will catch you next time here at Hometown Ghost Stories. Peace.